Hello, welcome to the second episode of Illogically Logical. I'm Kirk Hollick,
And I'm Kaylee Chantier.
and today we'll be following up on a story from our last episode about a bill in California regarding turning human trafficking into a felony from a misdemeanor. Then we will be discussing TikTok being potentially banned in America, hidden in a bill that provides funds to Israel and Ukraine. And then lastly, we will be discussing a little drama in the right-wing circles between Tucker Carlson and Jeremy Boring, who have conflicting views on atomic weapons, the moon landing, and 9/11.
Introduction, we're going to follow up on the SB 1414 bill. So I think what we didn't say last time is that the bill is going to make human sex trafficking for children a felony, which was previously a misdemeanor. For the bill, if a offender was caught and convicted of buying a child for sex and sex trafficking, they'll get previously a $10,000 fine with up to a year in jail, which for misdemeanors mostly it's up to a year in jail, and the fine depends the severity of the misdemeanor. And now it's going to be, if it's going to pass, so be up to 4 years in jail and a $25,000 fine. One of those people was Sandy Esperanza, who was a victim of sex trafficking at 14, and she thought 4 years, 25 will get the offender to maybe learn their lesson better. So I'll show you a video about if it's not going to pass by X's Cry, who is an advocate for stopping human trafficking.
California legislators just gutted the bill that would make it a felony to buy a child for sex. The bill would have made it a felony for any adult to purchase sex from a minor, but the committee members forced amendments on the bill, making it only a misdemeanor to buy a 16 or a 17-year-old.
I would be comfortable and would support your bill if it had the amendments that the committee has been asking for.
They even did this in a room full of trafficking survivors who supported this original bill. The amendments also stated that if someone paid to abuse a younger child, they still wouldn't serve any prison time. These amendments were forced onto Senator Grove, who's the bill's original author, and she protested them.
I am not willing to amend the language so that this bill only covers ages 15 and under. Are you forcing these amendments on me, Madam Chair?
Yeah, most likely, yes.
I'm on record declining those amendments.
This committee does not believe that prison is appropriate for child sex buyers who can still solicit a child of any age and only spend 2 days in jail. Gutting this bill sends a clear message that California tolerates adults paying to purchase children for sex.
Basically what it said, like the committee members who did oppose this bill said, like, I think there's already enough punishment and that it's only for 16, 17-year-olds. But I know a previous post that I saw is that most of those victims are 10 years old. So that's still pretty young. It's just insane that these people, like these committee members, sit in front of these human sex trafficking victims that this bill is not, it's not good. It should be a misdemeanor, not a felony. But like, it's trying to protect children. It's wanting to protect children from the evils of human trafficking, which is becoming a problem, especially near the border, where like a lot of people are victims of sex trafficking or in forced labor, which is part of human trafficking.
Yeah, well, what I think, if I were to play devil's advocate for the people that are against the bill and want all these amendments, I think it's that there's such a stigma behind the American prison system. Like there's all this terrible things that happen, and people get so down focused on the bad things that can happen in prison. They don't really think about what gets people there in the first place. Yes, obviously there's flaws, and some innocent people are unfortunately placed into that terrible system, but they're not thinking about a larger picture or how they can fix it so actual criminals get into these prisons. And quite frankly, those terrible people deserve treatments and quality of life that prison would implement.
Yeah, like in the US there is a mass overcrowding in prison. It's been a problem for years. And yes, there's a lot of people who've been in prison and been falsely accused of a crime that they didn't commit. But because I know the US has a soft on crime, especially in California and like in New York, where a lot of people have been booked and they've been booked for a crime and then like right after they're booked, the release. This can be a problem for like victims of for more severe crimes, because I'm pretty sure some of those people who probably done human trafficking, who committed to human trafficking, have probably a long rap sheet, which they can probably, if they get a misdemeanor, up to a year in prison, maybe like not getting treatment, they can do it again and purchase a child for sex again. And it's not like this is not for 17, 16-year-olds. A lot of them are 10-year-olds, because I feel like 10-year-olds are they're a lot more easy to be manipulated than a 16, 17-year-old, because 16, 17-year-olds are more like they're closer to the adult age, while 10-year-olds still learning about who to trust, who not to trust. And they're still learning from their mistakes. Like say 16 and 17-year-olds, they still learn from their mistakes, but 10-year-olds are much more vulnerable than an older minor.
Well, where do they classify minor? Because does California have a younger age of consent than the rest of the country?
I'm not sure. I know you're legally considered an adult when you're 18, so that's when you can vote.
Well, frankly, I don't think it should matter if their age of consent or not. They should still be classified as children.
Yeah.
Up until 18 years old.
Yeah. Like it's just really heartbreaking to see that a lot of these people like in the community saying that like this bill is too harsh, which it isn't. I know last year they tried to introduce this bill again, but it didn't get passed. And like the community member who was denying the amendments, the woman, she said like it's just really awful that human sex trafficking is considered a misdemeanor, where like robbing a bank is considered a felony, which they should both be felonies because you're hurting someone. So robbery is like you're forcing someone to give something to you.
Yeah, just because they're not the same doesn't mean they shouldn't be equal in how they're treated in their respective contexts.
Yeah. And I know a lot of people say like human trafficking really isn't that problem. I know like when Sound of Freedom came out, a lot of the left said that it's a QAnon conspiracy theory that human trafficking doesn't exist. But there's an article that I found that says that California, like last year, was #1 rating of human trafficking because it's such a big state and it's near the border. And let's see. Says It says California is one of the largest sites of human trafficking in the United States. In 2018, 1,656 cases of human trafficking were reported in California. Of those, 1,226 were sex trafficking cases, 151 were labor trafficking cases, 110 involved both labor and sex trafficking, and 169 cases, the type of trafficking was not specified. So it is being reported, it is happening. I know the other two is Florida and Texas. Texas makes a lot of sense because it's right on top of the border. I think Florida, there's like Disney World, Universal. I know Disney in a few years had a sex ring exposed by the police a few years ago. So that can count toward the cases. So a lot of people are saying, oh, it's a QAnon conspiracy theory. It's not. It's happening. It's happening probably in the state. It's happening in small towns, not as big as bigger cities, but it is happening.
Yeah, and I think like human trafficking of any kind, sexual or not, should be a pretty universal thing that everybody can agree on that it's bad and needs to be cracked down upon way more, because it's like it's $1 billion industry of illegally taking people against their will and completely robbing them of their autonomy and humanity by just selling them and treating them like property, which I don't know why. It's not a unifying issue, and it's something that in fact is quite divisive to talk about from the left and the right.
You know, like when I was younger, like I didn't know much about human trafficking because it wasn't talked about, but like now it's being talked about more, I think, because of I think the division between it. I think on both sides you should be united against advocating for human rights to people who are victims of trafficking. I mean, I think human trafficking surpasses slavery back then during when slavery was legalized. So it's still happening, but like it's happening everywhere, and a lot of people are a part of it that you probably would be surprised that who are.
Yeah, and I think
you would think.
Yeah, and I think it's not very good that there's a lot of finger pointing saying like people on the right are the real perpetrators of human trafficking and sex stuff with kids, and then people on the right will point fingers back and say, no, it's all the leftists that are doing it. I don't think that's not productive at all. Obviously, there are predators on both sides of the aisle. There's predators on the center of the aisle. There's predators that are completely non-political. I really don't know why we have to polarize it in such a way that one side is being labeled pro and anti, when it's really just a universal issue where everybody needs to agree that it's bad. Maybe punishments as like those amendments, those are like I think it's fine to talk about punishments, but the fundamental issue is being divided between a left and a right issue, and it should be a universal thing rather than what it is now.
Yeah, like a lot of situations, like a lot of topics that shouldn't be politicized they're politicized. They're for common sense things. I know, like for transgenderism, that's politicized. And like abortion's politicized, and human trafficking is. But I think, like you said, like it shouldn't be. People should be united to help people who are victims and find ways to prevent it. Because I work at a hotel, so I'm trained to find potential risk of human trafficking, because the hotel I work at is on a major interstate, and it's one of the like I-70. I-70 is I think one of the biggest interstates that has human trafficking on the interstate. So like we're trained to make sure if we see someone who could be trafficked, we're trained to see if they're wearing baggy clothes or they are very uncomfortable around the person they're around. They cannot speak, can't have any eye contact. They can't look at me if I'm checking them in. And basically I have to call the police and the manager to make sure that they're away from their trafficker. So like if a lot of people who work in areas where human trafficking can be a problem, I think that shows you that is a problem.
Yeah, and like if you're like basic employees are being given lessons on how to spot potential trafficking, that really shows how big of an issue it really is in the society that we live in today.
Yeah, and like I know like the border's being politicized. I mean, the cartel, if you look at the Hill, there's a senator who is a cop from New York. It's Anthony Pasito. I don't know if I'm saying his name right. He said there's a cartel at like MS-13 that says they're using MS-13, has increasingly turned sex trafficking over the last decade to generate more income alongside drug trafficking, because I think the cartel knows it's a major income for them. If they're using that for their income, I also should tell you that human trafficking is becoming a big problem. And like Sound of Freedom, the movie that came out, a lot of people said that's a theory, like QAnon theory, but that was based on real time and how he found a lot of children who were trafficked, which should tell you that you need probably look more into it and to see what needs to be done to prevent human trafficking.
Absolutely. I'm sounding like a broken record, but like no real progress will be made until both sides are able to drop their argumentative barriers that they build up, drop their egos, and just accept, let left and right come together and really focus on tackling the root of the problem, how to help the victims, and how to properly punish the perpetrators and predators.
So the next story is, I think all of us should know what's going on with TikTok. A bill did pass about banning TikTok in the US. It is part of another bill where they send money to Ukraine, Israel, and I think Taiwan. And then the TikTok ban was below that bill. So it really wasn't like a bill of itself, and Joe Biden signed it. So TikTok has up to 9 months to a year to find a different owner that's not ByteDance, or it gets banned from the US. The reason why they want to ban it is because they have concerns about China, like gathering information from the U.S. citizens. But the thing is, Facebook and Instagram have the same problems. They do take information from their users. So I think, to me, I think it's over. It's not. I really shouldn't. If you're, it really shouldn't be necessary. But like, if you want to ban TikTok, you should ban Instagram and Facebook because they're just as bad.
See, I think the reason why they're on TikTok so specifically, it's because it's spyware for the Chinese government, because the Chinese government is directly connected to whichever company owns TikTok itself. So that's why they're so cracked down on it. But I also question if they even are that enthusiastic about it, because they're sneaking it in as a way to make a bill that provides a lot of money to foreign aid look better and get the support. So I feel like it's kind of like a mousetrap of a bill.
Yeah. So yeah, I understand that China is like one of the US's biggest enemies, but like I know Mark Zuckerberg does business with China, so I mean, I understand you want to protect the citizens, but like but there's, I feel like there's more something going on than what's being said.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting about how, or especially why now, because it hasn't really been widely talked about how TikTok takes all your information, because that was like really old news. So I don't know why. Well, obviously laws take forever to get drafted, but it's kind of strange that they decided to do something about it right now.
Yeah, I think it's very strange. I think maybe like it's like it's not confirmed, but like it's like during the 2024 election, so which could be part of it. I don't know, but
All right,
like
so for our last story, it's a bit of a drama between infighting between the right regarding Tucker Carlson on the Joe Rogan podcast, talking about how he believes that anybody who supports the atomic bomb's use in the end of World War II is evil, and there's no discussion about it. He says, like, flat out, if you support nuclear weapons and the use of them and how they were used in Japan in 1945, you are evil. And he also went on to kind of explain how he no longer trusts the government at anything, and how he's kind of delving into conspiracy theories and seeing the truth in them. So like, he went out and said that the moon landing is fake. For example, he said that, I believe he said that 9/11 was an inside job, and just a lot of kind of framing himself as the only true news source, and saying that any establishment news source, including like an establishment right like Fox News, they are wrong and in on some big conspiracy to mislead the public. And that led Jeremy Boring of the Daily Wire to tweet a response, not directly, just like an open tweet, but we all know who he was responding to. And he said that anybody who thinks that the moon landing was fake or that 9/11 was an inside job hates America. But he did go on to clarify that good faith questions are not the same as blindly ignoring any government or establishment source just because they are the establishment. And he did also go on to clarify that the discussion regarding the use of nuclear weapons is a moral dilemma separate from those two conspiracy theories, and is subject to a more in-depth conversation. So the right's kind of been split on whether you think that the establishment should be trusted every now and then, maybe take it with a grain of salt, or if you should never trust them and immediately believe conspiracy theories. But there was also backlash regarding Jeremy Boring's wording of saying that if you think 9/11 was an inside job or moon landing was fake, you just hate America flat out. So, Kaylee, what do you think about that?
I mean, I understand like where Boring is coming from. I mean, some of those conspiracy theories are a little far-fetched. But I do understand, like, I know a lot of people, even like on the right, believe the 9/11 was an inside job. And I understand that the supporting like Supporting nuclear like bombs can be a problem because I know during the Cold War there was always like a threat of being bombed and a lot of people will die. And during World War II when the US bombed Japan, there's a lot of casualties that even people who are not involved in the war. So it's devastating. I can see both sides, but I don't think you're anti-American if you believe in conspiracy theories. I believe you should probably do like your research to figure out, but don't blindly believe in conspiracy theories. It's okay to question government sources because even though they are the establishment, they also could be lying. So like it's just like kind of like you're just going back and forth with these.
And well, Ben Shapiro also briefly commented on it, saying that, and I agree with him, that Tucker Carlson is kind of framing himself as the only accurate news source because he goes out and attacks establishment or government sources and vilifying them to the point where he wants the impression that they should never be trusted and they cannot be trusted no matter any circumstance. And that kind of is a good business thing for him to do because he's fully independent. He says and does whatever he wants, which he should. But it frames him in a way to his fans or anybody easily influenced as he is the only source of news that you can get. He is the only person that you should go to because he is the only one not corrupted. It's kind of like when people say just asking questions, even though they've made a statement that they obviously believe it's not a genuine question, it's not in good faith. They're just saying, I'm just asking questions to avoid blame for anything that they may truly believe.
Yeah. I mean, if you're more independent, you're really not like because Tucker Carlson for Fox News, he probably had to follow some like policies and structures to meet Fox News' satisfactory. But like I don't think like he's one of the more honest ones, but I don't think he's the only one you can trust. There's a lot more. I mean, I understand like CNN, NBC, they really don't report on everything like they should. But I mean, it's up to the people's decision to make good guesses or like good decisions or like their opinion on certain things. I think you should look at both sides, but like not look at one.
And it's like some of Tucker's work. Like I think the Putin interview was mostly good. He asked like a few questions that were iffy, but like I will give him credit that like they were pretty unique questions. But then I take a look at something like his interview with Andrew Tate, and that was just a pretty abysmal interview. He did no research on the actual cases that he was asking Tate to comment on. He allowed him to talk whatever without any interruptions or fact checking, and it was really just like a fluff piece that he just made. So I think obviously he is not an infallible news source, and I'm not saying that he's claiming to be, but it's just like an indirect way, and that's the impression that he's giving off by talking down on establishment news sources, which for better or worse, a broken clock strikes twice a day. So eventually an establishment news source will lay out a fact or two.
Yeah. I mean, or they'll back check what they've said in the past. But like, I think for good journalists, you should like push your interviewees to I think to see what all they're saying because you just do fluff pieces. You're really not doing really good journalism. You're just like you're putting the person you're interviewing on a pedestal that shouldn't be because like for both because I know like both sides they will do fluff pieces for certain individuals that should not be on pedestals. Like Andrew Tate, a lot of people put him on a pedestal, but like there's some things, a lot of things he's done that are not good, or there's some things he says that would hurt men more than they actually benefit.
Yeah, but then on the other hand, with like Jeremy Boring talking about saying you hate America, I'm almost wanting to like I don't think he meant it, but I will acknowledge that there is a world where perhaps that was like a Freudian slip where he just like let it slip out on what he actually believes. And no, I don't think believing in conspiracy theories is innately unpatriotic, but I do see his point, and I do mostly agree with him that if you just blindly disagree with everything your government says, just for the sake of opposing an establishment source, that is pretty bad and idiotic and stupid. But I do respect that he kind of does acknowledge that in terms of the nuclear question, it's separate from those conspiracy theories. And that's another bad thing that I think Tucker did, was I really don't think that if you support the nuclear bombs that you are an evil person, because there are pretty wide variety of arguments. Like the bombs did end World War II and most likely saved most lives, Japanese and American. But do I think a nuclear bomb should ever be used again? No.
Yeah, I mean, there's some conspiracy theories that like they do make sense, but like if you look more into it, the current thing that's being said, like 9/11, it does make sense. Like, listen, we don't know much. Like, there's still some things about 9/11 that we don't know about, but like I think right now it was a terrorist attack by Osama bin Laden. It was not. Bush didn't do anything. I think was not connected to it other than he was announcing about war and terror. I do kind of agree that war and terror, how he did it, was not like a great way, but I mean, I don't think he intentionally bombed 2 towers in New York, but like, and also like for the bombs, like yeah, like nuclear bombs are a lot more detrimental than any other bomb, and yeah, it did save like in for a sacrifice for a large group of people, a bigger group of people was saved. But like I understand like nuclear bombs should not be used again because it does more damage than actually does good, because there's a lot more people here now than 1940s during World War II.
Yeah. Well, I think how nuclear bombs exist now, because now they're not even made to be used. They're just there to kind of dangle in front of your enemies, because every major country has nuclear weaponry. So they're all just like deterring each other, which in a way, it's bad that they need to exist, but the way that they're being used is not inherently bad just by having them exist and having people know that they exist. Because deterrent is going to obviously stop anybody else from using them, because just mutually assured destruction. And obviously that's a pretty dire thing to think about, but knowing that that kind of system of security is in place is a little more comforting than knowing that a wide-scale war could break out at any time in the world, especially with all the advanced technology, not including nuclear bombs.
Yeah, no, like I do agree. They're kind of like a way to deter from starting a nuclear war. I mean, I feel like Daily Wire has been under a lot of hot water a lot because of like what happened to Candace Owens, and then Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens, and then Steven Crowder and Daily Wire. I mean, I understand that if like some conspiracies can do more damage, but I don't like. I think he worded it very wrongly, and I understand that it's good to question, but it's good to like question, then kind of take something in consideration why people are saying these things, and then maybe do some research after that to understand.
Yeah, there's no point in asking questions if you're just trying to affirm what you've already come to the conclusion of.
Yeah. I would say be open-minded to fully understand what people are saying, because you just question things, you're really not soaking in the information that people are trying to put out.
But I do find it interesting how there's just a lot of infighting on particularly right-wing circles.
Yeah. I mean, we should unite, especially what's all going on in the world. I mean, I feel like sometimes the left is more united than the right, because they do agree a lot of things. I think there is fighting on the left, but I feel like there's a lot more fighting right now on the right, which doesn't really create any solutions, or it just makes people fight on the internet and nothing being solved.
Well, I think it's definitely different from how like left-wing groups infight, because I do see like a lot of people on the right are starting to do it, but they're demonizing people that disagree with them. So like if a leftist and a leftist disagree on one thing, they'll demonize each other, and then whichever side has the loudest majority will silence the minority, and then they'll be united again relatively quickly. And the right has been mostly open to just widespread discussion. Obviously, I think diversity of thought is the most important thing in all politics. But you do start seeing it, like no major figures are doing it yet. But there's a lot of like the smaller Twitter accounts commenting and just demonizing anybody that disagrees with them in their perceived notion of what is the correct thing that the right side of the aisle should think. And you saw this a lot with like the Crisis King debacle. And I feel like this is like just a continuation of that, where everybody's picking sides if you're establishment right or if you're 100% independent right.
Yeah. I think, yeah, I do see a lot of demonization, which you're creating more enemies than you actually are. Like you're both on the same side, you're both fighting for the same cause, and if you're fighting, you're really not seeing like the important things that are being talked about, or like what's happening across the board.
Mm-hmm. And it's especially pretty damaging because it's an election year.
Yeah.
Which is a lot of people are going to be flooding to those sources because obviously this is like your busy season, election year. But if their sources are filled up with commentating on inter-party drama, it's going to take away from any important stories that need to be told. But hopefully everything settles down and people kind of, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter if Tucker Carlson and Jerry Boring don't like each other. They've never really collaborated. They probably won't ever collaborate. There's crossover, and if people want to pick sides, they'll pick sides. But I think it really just needs to get back down to doing proper commentary or news or whatever projects they're working on.
I don't think Tucker Carlson or Daily Wire or Jerry Boring will lose any followers, because like the people that agree with on either side, they've been agreeing with them for a while. But if you keep fighting about this, it's just wasting time.
All right, that is our last story, and I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Like and comment and subscribe. Goodbye.